Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. My name is Teacher Alastair, and welcome to our free trial class for Wright Homeschool Academy's Human Anatomy course. The purpose of today's session is to introduce you to the course material and give you a sense for a typical class in it. On that note, if you're not planning on purchasing our asynchronous learning package and are rather interested in signing up for our live interactive classes, quick disclaimer that today's session will have a slightly different feel to it than a normal class you'd take with us, and that's because there are no other students here right now. It's just me. So that means the points in class at which I ask a question would normally be responded to by students raising their hands, answering the question, discussing. What you'll see in today's recording instead is I'll put a 3-second timer up with my fingers like this, and that should give you enough time to hit the pause button and answer the question however you see fit. So if you're watching with somebody else, you can turn and discuss amongst yourselves. If you're by yourself, you can write your answer down. You can mull it over in your head. You can speak it aloud as if we were in a live interactive class, whatever works best for you. Also, our live interactive classes are exactly 1 hour long. The recording you're watching today is a little bit shorter. And that's because, again, there's no student interaction, and there's also no bamboozle at the end. What is bamboozle, you might be asking? Well, it's a fun, interactive question and answer review game that we've specially designed to review the material that we covered in each class. So you'll get a look at that at the end of today's recording, and the link to play the game is in the description box below. One final housekeeping issue: it might not be me, Teacher Alastair, actually teaching you the live interactive course, and that's because we have several other educators on our team here at Wright Homeschool Academy. So if you're interested in learning more about our educator requirements or want to see our educator profiles, that's all on our website, the link for which is also in the description box below. All right, with that being said, let's jump right into the Human Anatomy course, starting first with what it's all about. So you can purchase the course for all 32 classes or just 30 of the classes. The reason for that is the final two, as you'll see, are about male and female human anatomy, reproduction, puberty, some topics that some students might find sensitive information and not be comfortable covering, but others are more than happy to learn about. So we leave that choice up to you. All right, and the slideshows are divided up into 3 sections, and that's just so that the slideshows don't get overwhelmed with too many slides. It can be a pain to load them, so this is just cleaner and easier. So feel free to pause at any stage here as I'm showing you the 3 slideshow sections for the course schedule. Today we'll be covering Class 1 here, Introduction to Human Anatomy. All right, here is the second part. You'll notice there's review going on part of the way through. That's because we cover a lot of topics and difficult vocabulary, so it's always helpful to do some review. And here's the third and final section with these 2 classes added on at the end optionally, as I mentioned earlier. All right, so let's get into today's class, an introduction to human anatomy. One final public service announcement before we do. Today's class is an introduction and overview to a lot of different topics and body systems in human anatomy. So if you feel overwhelmed, like there's a ton of information, you can't keep up, maybe you're trying to take notes, which I definitely encourage, don't worry. Rest easy knowing that if you sign up for our courses, you'll be covering each of those topics in its own dedicated class, as you saw on the course schedule. So you don't need to get it all down today, is what I'm saying. All right, so what is human anatomy? It is the branch of biology that deals with the structure of the human body. Focuses on the organization of tissues, organs, and systems that make up the human body. Understanding anatomy is essential for fields like medicine, physical therapy, and sports science. So I'll point out here that in normal classes, students would have the opportunity to read, take turns reading if they like. We would also stop and discuss any difficult vocabulary along the way. Of course, where it's just me, I'll be doing all of that here today. A couple fun facts I'll throw at you about anatomy. The word anatomy itself is derived from 2 different Greek words, which roughly translate to cut up. Why do you think this word anatomy was created to describe this branch of science? Why use the words that mean cut up? Well, if you said it's because in order to understand the human body, you have to cut up and inspect, dead human bodies, then you are right. Good job. And my other fun fact to share here is that um, generally Leonardo da Vinci, the Renaissance polymath, is considered the first anatomist. He was way ahead of his time, and he was very interested in the human body and how it functioned, and he would cut up human bodies and take a look inside to learn more about how they worked. Luckily, we live in the digital age, so I'll just be showing you pictures, in many cases, cartoon graphics, so it doesn't have to be quite so, well, graphic. All right, let's talk about tissues. No, I'm not talking about facial tissues. I mean the biological organizational level between cells and organs. So, in other words, lots of cells make up tissues, and then multiple tissues make up organs. That's how it works. Okay, there are lots of organs in the human body. Can you name a few? Okay, great. You're on the right track. So in biology, an organ is a group of tissues that work together to perform a specific function or set of functions in a living organism. Let's take the stomach, for example. Okay, your stomach is an organ. It's made up of multiple tissues, many of which are muscular, and together they work to perform digestion. So they break down food into smaller pieces, doing it both physically by smashing the food inside the walls, and also chemically by being filled with enzymes and acids that help to chemically dissolve and break down the foods. Organs are typically composed of multiple tissue types, including parenchymal, that just means functional, so the tissues that are actually performing the function, doing the thing, and stromal tissues. These are the structural tissues, so they make up the shape and space of the organ so that it can do its thing. And they're often found in multicellular organisms, including animals and plants. Of course, in this course, we'll only be covering human anatomy. Humans are multicellular organisms. We're made up of many, many cells. In fact, do you know how many cells make up the human body? If your answer is, I don't know, that's a safe bet because actually nobody knows. Scientists don't know. They can only guess. There are so many cells and they're constantly dividing and dying and being replaced that it's a very difficult task to estimate how many cells make up the human body, though I have seen estimates ranging from 3 to 30 billion. That's a billion with a B. You might notice that's also a pretty wide range. There's a big difference between 3 billion and 30 billion, right? So it just goes to show how little scientists know about that particular question, how unable they are to answer it. Okay, let's talk about some examples of organs. We're talking about the digestive system here. Can you name any of these? Let's start with number 1. What is this tube called? Okay, if you said the esophagus, good for you. If you didn't, well, don't worry. That's one of the organs that we're covering in today's class. Let's move on to number 2, just to delineate it a little bit more clearly. We're talking about this sort of, I don't know, curvy parabola-shaped thing on top. What's that? It's a muscle. Be a big flex if you knew it. That is called your diaphragm, sometimes referred to as the thoracic diaphragm. Thoracic's just a fancy word meaning anything to do with your chest or ribs. Okay, so the diaphragm is a muscle that separates what's in your chest, your thoracic cavity, from what's in your abdomen, sort of your stomach midsection area. And it's actually more involved in your respiratory system, like breathing with the lungs, than it is in digestion. Okay, let's move on to number 3. What is this? Yes, that is your stomach. Very good. How about number 4? This is the largest internal organ. It's about the size of a football. It's like 3.5 pounds, something like that. That is your liver. Your liver. Okay, how about number 5? Number 5, what's that? If you said the gallbladder, congratulations, you should be teaching the course. Come on up here. Okay, how about number 6? Just to be clear, we're talking about this right here. That is called your duodenum. It's actually part of the small intestine. It's the first section that food enters after it leaves the stomach. So your small intestine is divided up into 3 sections: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. But most of the action happens in the duodenum. It's the most important part of the small intestine. In fact, it's the most important part of your whole intestinal tract, I would say. Okay, number 7, kind of tucked in behind there, like that. What's that? That is your pancreas. Really good. Okay, number 8, this one's a little tricky. It's like practically not even pictured here. If you get this, I'll be impressed. Okay, that's your spleen. It's actually kind of hiding in behind there. You can't really see it here. So if you got that one, you are the master. All right, good job, guys. Let's move on and talk about these one at a time. All right, starting with the esophagus. So what is it? It is a muscular tube that moves food and liquids from the throat to the stomach using wave-like contractions called peristalsis. Peristalsis. Okay, the way I think about peristalsis is kind of like, you know, when your toothpaste is getting low and you have to squeeze toothpaste from the bottom of the tube up to the top to get some out? That's sort of what your esophagus is doing. It's sort of that squeezing motion where it's moving that down the tube. That's what your esophagus is doing with peristalsis. So just think about your toothpaste tube. The lower sphincter of the esophagus prevents stomach acid from flowing back up, protecting the throat. Guys, your stomach is filled with an acid that is very powerful. If your stomach is specifically designed to withstand the corrosive nature of the acid, but if that acid were to get out of your stomach and into the rest of your body, it could corrode or dissolve and destroy other organs in your body. So it's very important. Your esophagus has this sphincter, which is an opening that can open and close to prevent that stomach acid from coming out, keeping it where it needs to be. All right, what we're looking at here is, of course, the lungs, but below the lungs here, that's a better image of the diaphragm, showing what I was talking about earlier, where it's separating the thoracic organs from the abdominal ones. So the thoracic diaphragm is the dome-shaped muscle that separates the chest from the abdomen and plays a key role in breathing. Okay, inhalation, exhalation, that kind of thing. All right, here we're looking at the stomach, which is a muscular organ that breaks down food through both mechanical churning, right, smashing the food up against the walls inside the stomach, and digestive juices, that's chemical digestion, including the acid that we talked about and some other enzymes. Okay, what's this one? You guys remember? Yes, that's right. That's the liver. This is a very vital organ. It's super important to your health. It performs all kinds of functions, processes nutrients, detoxifies harmful substances, and produces bile to aid in fat digestion. Okay, fat is a great source of energy, but it's kind of hard to break down. So that's where the liver comes in handy with bile. It also stores energy in the form of glycogen and helps regulate your blood sugar levels. So when you eat food, your blood sugar levels spike way up because your food is being broken down and the sugars are energy that your body needs. But that's too much energy all at once. So your body's organs, in particular the liver, absorb a lot of that sugar and store it up for later. So you don't have to keep eating all day long to have energy. Your body can slowly release the energy that it's already taken in at mealtime. So you can thank your liver for that. The liver also filters your blood, breaking down any toxins and old red blood cells to make sure that your blood is performing optimally. Hey guys, what's this? Very good. That is the gallbladder. It's a very small pear or maybe bean-shaped organ that stores and concentrates bile, a digestive fluid produced by the liver. Remember, we just talked about it. During digestion, it releases that bile into the small intestine, specifically into that first section of the small intestine. What was it called again, guys? That's right, the duodenum. Very good. Okay, and that helps break down fats. Now, the gallbladder is an example of a non-essential organ, meaning if you had to have it surgically removed for whatever reason, you would still survive without it. Okay, it's not essential for survival. It is more like a helper organ. So it's performing these functions that help, but they're not necessary for your survival. It would be better if you had your gallbladder. If you can keep it inside your body, it definitely belongs there and it'll help out. It will relieve some of the strain from your other organs by sharing the workload, but you could have it removed in theory. Okay, we just talked about this one, the duodenum. You guys did a great job mentioning it's the first section of the small intestine. This is where most of your chemical digestion occurs. So it receives the partially digested food. At this time, it's called chyme. So you chew up the food in your mouth, and then it's called the bolus, this like moist, slippery ball of mush. You swallow the bolus down your esophagus into your stomach, it gets smashed around and chemically dissolved. And by this time, it's this foamy white mass that's pushed into your duodenum, and there it's called the chyme. And we already discussed how bile is introduced into the duodenum from the liver and the gallbladder, and alongside some other digestive enzymes from the pancreas, which we'll talk about in a moment. That's where a lot of that chemical digestion occurs, and that helps to break down fats, proteins, and carbohydrates for absorption in the rest of the small intestine. So the other two sections that I mentioned earlier, the jejunum and the ileum, they get that chyme all broken down for them, and they can start absorbing the key nutrients away. What was that organ that we just mentioned? What was it called again? Oh yeah, the pancreas. That's right. This is an organ that produces those digestive enzymes to help break down fats, proteins, and carbohydrates in the small intestine, like we just discussed. It is also involved in another body system. So it's not just a helper organ for your digestive system, like we'll be talking about today, but also in a future class, we'll talk about how it is involved in releasing hormones like insulin and glucagon into your bloodstream to help regulate blood sugar levels. So technically, it's part of the endocrine system as well, which is responsible for releasing hormones, which are messengers, which tell your organs what to do. So this dual role, meaning it's working for both your digestive system and your endocrine system, makes it essential for both digestion and your metabolism. Okay, guys, this was the one that was hiding a little earlier, a little bit sneaky. You couldn't see it. If you named it, you were the master. Which digestive organ is this? Wonderful. You got it. That's right. The spleen. It is involved in filtering blood and supporting the immune system. It removes old or damaged red blood cells, recycles iron, and helps fight infections by producing and storing white blood cells. This is another example of an organ that's not essential for your survival. So I personally know people who have had to have their spleen surgically removed. They're alive and well today, but it is an important organ. It's a helper organ as well. So if you can keep it inside, I would recommend that. All right, that's going to take us to our first video clip, guys. Typically, you'll find that there's one video clip around the halfway mark and then another one towards the end just before our bamboozle. Although in some cases, if there are a lot of topics or new concepts that we're introducing, we'll have a short video clip following each of them. So it could follow either pattern. Okay, this one is a particularly good video that just breaks down, no pun intended, how the digestive system works. All right, so I'll play the video with subtitles and I'll turn off my mic and camera so there's no background distractions.
Across the whole planet, humans eat on average between 1 and 2.7 kilograms of food a day. That's over 365 kilograms a year per person, and more than 28,800 kilograms over the course of a lifetime. And every last scrap makes its way through the digestive system. Comprised of 10 organs, covering 9 meters, and containing over 20 specialized cell types, this is one of the most diverse and complicated systems in the human body. Its parts continuously work in unison to fulfill a singular task, transforming the raw materials of your food into the nutrients and energy that keep you alive. Spanning the entire length of your torso, the digestive system has 4 main components. First, there's the gastrointestinal tract, a twisting channel that transports your food and has an internal surface area of between 30 and 40 square meters, enough to cover half a badminton court. Second, there's the pancreas, gallbladder, and liver, a trio of organs that break down food using an array of special juices. Third, the body's enzymes, hormones, nerves, and blood all work together to break down food, modulate the digestive process, and deliver its final products. Finally, there's the mesentery, a large stretch of tissue that supports and positions all your digestive organs in the abdomen, enabling them to do their jobs. The digestive process begins before food even hits your tongue. Anticipating a tasty morsel, glands in your mouth start to pump out saliva. We produce about 1.5 liters of this liquid each day. Once inside your mouth, chewing combines with the sloshing saliva to turn food into a moist lump called the bolus. Enzymes present in the saliva break down any starch. Then your food finds itself at the rim of a 25-centimeter long tube called the esophagus, down which it must plunge to reach the stomach. Nerves in the surrounding esophageal tissue sense the bolus's presence and trigger peristalsis, a series of defined muscular contractions. That propels the food into the stomach, where it's left at the mercy of the muscular stomach walls, which pound the bolus, breaking it into chunks. Hormones secreted by cells in the lining trigger the release of acids and enzyme-rich juices from the stomach wall that start to dissolve the food and break down its proteins. These hormones also alert the pancreas, liver, and gallbladder to produce digestive juices and transfer bile, a yellowish-green liquid that digests fat, in preparation for the next stage. After 3 hours inside the stomach, the once shapely bolus is now a frothy liquid called chyme, and it's ready to move into the small intestine. The liver sends bile to the gallbladder, which secretes it into the first portion of the small intestine, called the duodenum. Here, it dissolves the fats floating in the slurry of chyme so they can be easily digested by the pancreatic and intestinal juices that have leached onto the scene. These enzyme-rich juices break the fat molecules down into fatty acids and glycerol for easier absorption into the body. The enzymes also carry out the final deconstruction of proteins into amino acids and carbohydrates into glucose. This happens in the small intestine's lower regions, the jejunum and ileum, which are coated in millions of tiny projections called villi. These create a huge surface area to maximize molecule absorption and transference into the bloodstream. The blood takes them on the final leg of their journey to feed the body's organs and tissues. But it's not over quite yet. Leftover fiber, water, and dead cells sloughed off during digestion make it into the large intestine, also known as the colon. The body drains out most of the remaining fluid through the intestinal wall. What's left is a soft mass called stool. The colon squeezes this byproduct into a pouch called the rectum, where nerves sense it expanding and tell the body when it's time to expel the waste. The byproducts of digestion exit through the anus, and the food's long journey, typically lasting between 30 and 40 hours, is finally complete.
Okay, guys, I thought that was a super interesting video. What did you guys think? All right, so here are some of the key body systems that we will be covering in the course. Of course, the digestive system we just did, the muscular system, the circulatory system, sometimes called your cardiovascular system, having to do with your heart, your blood vessels, your blood. The respiratory system, so your lungs, we'll see the diaphragm there as well. Skeletal system, the nervous system, both of which are highlighted here because I'll talk about them briefly in just a moment. The endocrine system, which you heard me mention earlier, is all about your hormones. The reproductive system, of course, is offered as an elective at the end as 2 separate classes. The urinary system, so your kidneys, your ureters, your urethra. The integumentary system, so a big fancy word, but it just means your skin, hair, nails. The lymphatic system, okay? And each system has a specific function that contributes to overall homeostasis. This is a word that you will hear in basically every class that you take in this course, homeostasis. So if you're taking notes, definitely want to add this one to it. So I'll read this dictionary definition and then I'll give you my personal definition. So it says here, homeostasis is the process by which the body maintains a stable internal environment despite external changes. It involves regulating factors like temperature, pH, hydration, and the balance of nutrients and waste products to ensure optimal functioning of cells and systems. For example, the body sweats to cool down when it's too hot and shivers to warm up when it's too cold, keeping the internal temperature within a healthy range. So basically, guys, think homeostasis, think balance. Your body is constantly striving towards this ideal state of perfect balance. It has just the right amount of each kind of nutrient in the body. Every metric, like its temperature, its pH balance, all this stuff is all within a healthy, acceptable range. This is sort of like the Goldilocks story for your body, right? It doesn't want the porridge to be too hot or too cold. It needs to be in the middle, just right. That's what your body is constantly working towards. Unfortunately for your body, that never happens. It's a goal that it never reaches. And the reason is because you are too busy living your life. You're eating things, drinking things, encountering things in your environment, getting injured, et cetera, et cetera. And so your body never quite reaches that homeostasis that it's working towards. However, that is the goal that all your systems are pointed towards. It's looking for the perfect balance of everything. That's homeostasis. And like I said, it comes up in every class because all your systems are working towards this goal. So let's talk about some functions and key structures of each of these systems you saw me highlighting earlier. So we talked about the digestive system. Its function is to break down food, absorb nutrients from your foods to fuel the rest of your body, and eliminate any waste products. Major components include your mouth, throat, esophagus, stomach, intestines, rectum, and anus. That's the gastrointestinal tract. That's the pathway that your food takes through your body from beginning to end. Some key structures include your teeth, salivary glands, which, as the name implies, produce saliva, your liver, pancreas, and gallbladder. Fun fact about your digestive system is that the small intestine is about 20 feet long in adults, yet it fits inside the body because it is coiled so tightly. So, in other words, the small intestine is not so small. In fact, the small intestine is larger than the large intestine. It's both heavier and longer. So why the name? It has to do with the diameter. The small intestine has a smaller diameter. It's narrower, whereas the large intestine has a much wider diameter. It's wider. Okay, the skeletal system provides structure, protection, allows for movement, it stores minerals, and produces your blood cells. So a lot more happening here than people typically give the skeletal system credit for. That's because when we think of a skeleton, we think of a dead skeleton. But a skeleton is not dead. It's just that the bones are the last thing to decompose. Okay, your skeleton is part of your living system. For example, your blood cells are produced inside your bones. So the major components there would be bones, cartilage, ligaments. Some people might include tendons in there as well. Key structures are your skull, your spine, your ribs, and your limbs, like your arms and legs. And there are 206 bones in the human body at adulthood. That's your fun fact. Why with the stipulation at adulthood? That's because babies, newborns, have more bones than adults, technically speaking. In reality, they don't really, but their bones have not fully fused together yet, so they're counted as more bones. Really what happens is the bones aren't fully fused together so that as the body grows, the bones don't have to stretch or break. They can just grow with the body, and then when the body's done growing, they can fuse together. Sort of how it works. Okay, the nervous system, don't be nervous, I'll tell you all about it, receives sensory input, processes information, coordinates actions, and maintains balance. Remember, think balance, think, you got it, homeostasis. So some major components include the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. Spinal cord, not to be confused with the spinal column. The column is the bones, like the vertebrae. The cord is like a bundle of nerves that goes through the spinal column. Some key structures include neurons, sensory receptors, synapses, your cerebrum, and your cerebellum. Fun fact about the nervous system is that the brain has about 86 billion, that's billion with a B, neurons, with each forming thousands of connections. Fascinating. Okay, here comes our next our final video clip coming from National Geographic, giving you an overview of all the body systems, including the ones I just covered. Take it away.
The human body is a complex network of cells, tissues, and organs that together make life possible. 10 major systems are responsible for the body's functions: skeletal, muscular, cardiovascular, nervous, endocrine, lymphatic, respiratory, digestive, urinary, reproductive. The skeletal, muscular, cardiovascular, and nervous systems in particular create an infrastructure that facilitates the other systems. The adult skeletal system is a framework of over 200 bones. They hold the body together, give it shape, and protect its organs and tissues. The skeleton also provides anchor points for the muscular system, which includes 3 types of muscles: skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. They are found throughout the body and facilitate movement. Nestled within these muscles is the cardiovascular system, a pipeline that includes the heart, blood vessels, and the blood itself. Also called the circulatory system, the cardiovascular system delivers oxygen, white blood cells, hormones, and nutrients throughout the body. Lastly, the nervous system is a communication network of nerve cells that the body uses to transmit information and coordinate bodily functions. It's comprised of the brain, the hub of sensory and intellectual activity, the spinal cord, and the many cranial and spinal nerves that emanate from them. This infrastructure, created by neurons, blood, muscles, and bones, allows 3 other systems to regulate the body's environment: the endocrine, lymphatic, and urinary systems. The endocrine system is a series of glands that use information carried by the nervous system to help regulate the body's processes. Thanks to this neural connection, endocrine glands, such as the thyroid, are aware of the amount of hormones and other chemicals they need to produce. These chemicals are then distributed throughout the body by way of the cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular and nervous systems are also utilized by the lymphatic system, a collection of lymph nodes and vessels that help regulate the body's defenses. Also called the immune system, the lymphatic system uses neural pathways to transmit information about affected areas of the body and then sends out healing agents like white blood cells via the bloodstream. Another key regulatory system is the urinary system, which includes the kidneys, ureters, bladder, and urethra. The urinary or renal system maintains the body's electrolyte levels and filters waste from the blood. This waste is sent through the blood vessels into the kidneys and then expelled as urine. All of these systems require energy to function, and that's where the respiratory and digestive systems come in. The respiratory system is a group of passageways and organs that extracts life-giving oxygen from the air we breathe. Air enters the body through nasal cavities, travels down the throat, and is then transported to the lungs. The lungs extract oxygen for the body to use and then expel a carbon dioxide byproduct when we exhale. Energy can also come in the form of food. The digestive system is an approximately 30-foot series of organs that convert food into fuel. Food enters the system through the mouth, then moves into the esophagus, the stomach, and the intestines. Nutrients are absorbed into the body while solid waste is expelled through the anal canal, the end of the digestive tract. No matter the role, size, or shape of any of the body's systems, each began with the reproductive system. This system is responsible for creating life. The primary organs involved differ between the sexes, with ovaries, fallopian tubes, the uterus, and vagina found in women, and testes and a sperm channel found in men. Together, fertilization may occur, organ systems form, and then a child is born. Humans are complicated organisms, but when our 10 major organ systems are healthy, they ensure our well-being.
All right. Did you guys learn anything from that video? I hope so. So to review some of the concepts we've covered in today's class, there are different levels of organization in the human body. So there's the chemical level, which is like at the microscopic level, you're looking at atoms, molecules, etc. Above that is the cellular level, so talking about cells, what makes them up, their different components. Cells, as we discussed earlier, make up tissues. Okay, a tissue is defined as a group of similar cells working together. Those tissues work together to form organs, right? Those organs then perform a specific function. For example, take any of the organs that we looked at in today's class in the digestive system, and then a bunch of organs working together, like the digestive ones, work in what's called a system. Okay, and then you put all of our 10 systems together, and what you get is a complete human body. Now, for the purposes of this human anatomy course, we're going to be focusing on what's sometimes called gross anatomy. Not gross because it's yucky, although maybe some of it you might find yucky. Gross as in like large. So we're not focusing on the cellular level atoms and molecules and inside the cells and talking about organelles. Those are like the little organs you find inside cells. Reason being is it's very complicated and it's almost like a whole other topic of discussion. It's like a whole other world once you get down to that level. So we're just going to be focusing on gross anatomy, which again is tissues, but primarily organs and the systems that the organs are organized into, divided up into. Okay, we'll also be learning about things like the sensory system, so your touch, taste, seeing, smelling, and hearing. Immunology, the study of host defense mechanisms, how your body defends itself against foreign invaders like viruses and bacteria. We'll talk about common and rare bodily diseases that can affect the systems that we're studying. And again, there's the option to study the male and female reproductive systems in classes 31 and 32. So that's all the material that we've got for today's class. It's at this stage that we would play our Bamboozle review game. So if you had any questions to ask, there would be your opportunity. Otherwise, I'll give you a peek at what the Bamboozle looks like. Here are the questions I would expect you to be able to answer after having taken today's material. So, human anatomy is a branch of which scientific study? Name 5 organs. What is this? Tell us 2 facts about it. What was the most interesting thing you learned today? Why? What do you want to learn more about? What is this and what liquid does it produce? Name 2 systems in the human body and tell me what they do in your own words. Which organ moves food from your mouth down to your stomach? What is homeostasis? How many biological organizational levels can you name? And what are the 3 major components of the skeletal system? Okay, guys, that's it. That's all the material we have for today's class. I hope you learned lots. Thanks so much for coming. Reminder again that all the links, including for the Bamboozle, the website, and where to sign up for the class long-term are all in the description box below. So head on down there, give them a click. And from all of us here at Wright Homeschool Academy, see you in class.